Hello and welcome to this edition of the Most Actives with Bootleg Macro. We're going to be looking at Ford Motor Company today. It looks like Ford essentially rode the exact same wave as every other stock in the market from the lows of 2020 all the way to the highs of apparently 2022. So this stock actually lasted a little bit longer than many of the biotechs, the small startups, the GMEs, the Carvanas, and such. We can see that it did have a fall down in the middle of 2022, around $10.61 was the low. And essentially since then, we've gone sideways. We've essentially gone up, come down, gone up, come down. And it looks like we've essentially maybe bottomed if this pattern is going to continue and we could see a higher high. Potentially. Right now, if there was a technical person who was using like lines and charts, they'd say that they're probably seeing like a cone or a wedge or something like that. I don't see anything, especially when I look at the daily. Essentially, what I see is a whipsawed chart, which you could have been playing off of these levels. It looks like around like $11 or so, high tens. That's pretty much held for a while. It has been what looks like a generally a downward trend. We would want to see it break out. Obviously, higher highs would be possible. Would be positive. If we could get over above $15, that'd be great. We'll go ahead and look at the daily sentiment here. The red is going to be the bearish price action. The green is the bullish price action. Generally, the market wants to stay around 50%, and this indicator really can't go above 60 generally, and it can't really go below 40%. So, with the market currently being at 43%, we would expect at least some sort of bullish move to get us back around 50%, especially if we start to see the bullishness overtake this slow moving average that we have. That would be positive in the short term for Ford. We're looking at the weekly sentiment indicator. It is above 50%. It's essentially, again, middling around, going nowhere. Similar to what the chart has been doing, you can see that this is essentially just small waves with not a lot of enthusiasm. So I wonder what volume looks like. Volume on the weekly, it pretty much tells the same story, which is that volume's essentially been falling. There seems to be less and less interest in this specific name. It obviously changed a lot of hands, but that doesn't necessarily make those days significant. So back here, when this week was 958 million, that's a big week. When you have 645 million, that's also a big week. But generally, what you're looking at is you're probably around 285 million. Where back here, it looks like you're around 336 million in 2021. That's a big drop off in volume. Let's look at the volume on the daily sentiment or on the daily here. We can see we've had a gigantic day recently of 249 million shares traded, which, as we just saw, is really closely aligned to what we would have expected in essentially a day before or in a week before. We can see that the moving average is essentially trending down. Don't really need to pay attention to that. We can look at the volatility and the correlation of price. Volatility, it is interesting because this is a zero bound indicator. This is actually the lowest level I've ever seen, getting it down to 0.090. That's incredible. Now we see that volatility is actually going to shoot back up. Generally, what we'll see is these kind of like hills. You can get weird formations depending on what the price is doing, obviously, but this is going to be at least a resumption of an up. So we're going to get the beginning of some new hill. We are yet to know exactly what form it's going to take, but we can see that right now as volatility is breaking out, correlation is currently negative. So I would assume that price is falling aggressively. We'll go ahead and look at the non-sentiment trade range for the daily. I mean, it does tell the story that essentially you see that Ford is at the top of its range. The top of the range for Ford right now is 1340. The price closed at 1249, but it looks like a couple days ago the price was already at 1287. That's pretty close to the top of the range when you consider that you could fall all the way down back to 1065. Let's look at the weekly range here. Volatility is falling, so the range is getting tighter. We could go all the way up to $15, and we could go all the way down to 10. I'd be inclined to say that I might want to go a little bit long here, especially considering that you could use a stop around 11.30 or $11 even, depending on how you think about that general risk to reward. If you think you might be able to go to 15 and your stop's going to be at 11 and you're currently at 12.33, that might be something I'd be interested in. But this has just been an edition of the most active stocks in the U.S. stock market, brought to you by Bootleg Macro. Let me know what you think. Are you long? Are you short? Do you love it? Do you like it? Leave a comment below. Talk to you soon.